Good morning, and welcome to Redeemer Lutheran Church. I'm Pastor Gary Lodeholt. During Holy Week and Easter, the focus of our attention tends to be Jesus, and rightly so. What Jesus does during this week is central to our faith and our salvation. It's about Jesus, no doubt. However, there are other minor characters who play roles in the Passion of the Christ, and we often pass them by without much thought. So, as we still bask in the light of Easter Sunday, I thought we might spend this week looking at some of those minor characters who appear briefly on the stage of what God is doing. Today, we begin with Simon of Cyrene. When Jesus was on trial, the Gospels tell us how he was beaten and mocked, and then Pilate ordered that he should be flogged. This was done with a whip, usually something like a cat o' nine tails, with small pieces of lead on the ends of each thong to gouge the flesh. Normally, a person was sentenced to 40 lashes, but typically the person giving the lashes would stop at 39. It was well known that if you lost count or kept going in rhythm over 40, then you received 40 lashes yourself. So Jesus received 39 lashes with a whip, and in fact, this was such a severe punishment that many didn't survive the lashing. This might imply a couple of things. One, that after the beating, mocking, crown of thorns, and the lashing, Jesus was still standing. So he was a strong person. And second, having endured all that, there could clearly be a need to have someone else carry his cross to the place of execution. This was the normal procedure. A condemned person carried his own cross to the place of execution. Some folks picture a full cross on Jesus' shoulder with the vertical beam dragging behind him, but this is not a correct image. The vertical posts were kept at the crucifixion site, and what the condemned person carried was the heavy crossbeam across his shoulders. Weakened as he was, Jesus fell under the weight of that crossbeam. So the gospel writers in Matthew, Mark, and Luke tell us that the soldiers compelled a bystander, Simon from Cyrene, to carry the cross for Jesus. So, what can we know of Simon? Well, first let's talk about Cyrene. Cyrene was a Greek city in eastern Libya where 100,000 Jews had been forcibly sent about 300 years prior to this time. There was a synagogue in Jerusalem for these folks in Cyrene, and believers there often made pilgrimage to Jerusalem, which is what we presume Simon was doing. Later on, Cyrene became an early center of Christianity. Now, frankly, there is very little that we know about Simon himself, but there is one intriguing detail still to mention. As Mark tells the story, he mentions that this Simon was the father of Alexander and Rufus. Tradition says that Alexander and Rufus were early Christian missionaries, but we have no real evidence to support that. However, the fact that they were mentioned by Mark this way means that they were known and were of some standing in the early church. So here's what we might surmise. While Simon appears to be simply a man who was passing by, likely a Jew coming to worship in Jerusalem and who got caught up in the events happening around him, we might suspect that the events had some sort of effect on him, and that at some point he became a Christian believer. That belief was passed on to his two sons, who became leaders in the early church, and perhaps also missionaries. May we get caught up in the activities of Jesus in and around us. As Jesus dies on the cross for us, may we offer ourselves in service to our Lord and King. Thanks for watching, and remember to let this day belong to God.